morning. It's Tuesday, June 20th. And yesterday could have been a day from hell. And sometimes you're just pure lucky and you don't understand why you're so lucky. So the day starts out with my garage door snapping free and it won't open. But luckily, and this is the most lucky thing that happened to me in a long time, I had driven my car very little the day before, so I didn't put it in the garage for its nightly charge. So it was sitting outside, reasonably charged so that I could go visit my wife at the rehab center. But I couldn't get the garage door open because it had snapped in such a way that it was locked in place. So how lucky can you be when your only car would have been stuck inside the garage and you got to go visit your wife at the rehab center? That's part one of the good luck. And then the second thing that happens is that I still have to charge the car at some point, and the cable that's inside the garage is a 12-foot cable and will not reach under the door to my car. However, I did have an 18-foot cable that came with the car, and I kept that cable, and it's in there. So right at that point, I was able to figure out how to raise the garage door about 6 inches, get the 18-foot cable into the garage. Then I was able to hook into a socket in the hallway because I converted the socket in the garage to a 220 cable, and then I put it in and plugged it into my car at the other end, and voila, the car was charging. But the car is going to take like 6 hours at that point to charge all the way. But that's okay, because driving that I had to do in that morning was not serious. So if I got a quarter charge or a half a charge for 2 hours or so, then I would be able to move around and do whatever I wanted to do. Not only that, my car also runs on gas, so it wasn't a terrible situation. The terrible situation came about when I tried to get customer service from Sears. And I called 3 different times the same phone number. And the first time I got a guy who couldn't speak English hardly, and I couldn't make him understand what was going on. And he said, wait, I'll come back, but he never came back. And then I called again and went through a similar situation with the next guy. And finally, this is about an hour later, on the third phone call, I got through to see it. And I'm not saying these people were impolite or anything. It's just their phone system, they ask you all kinds of innocuous questions. And they're meaningless. I got a simple thing to, my garage door is broken, I need to get it fixed. I have a service agreement. Finally, I got somebody that I was able to talk to that understand everything I was saying. I didn't understand everything he was saying, but in any event, we got it straightened out. And today, sometime today, the repair people are going to come and look at my garage door, and hopefully they'll get it squared away. Because this thing just ripped off the wall. It's hanging cockeyed off the wall, you know. Not the garage door. The garage door straight in, stuck all the way down to the ground. But the arm that controls the opening and closing is stuck in a crazy position. I couldn't get it to move an inch. I wasn't about to dismantle it, which I could have done. But then I figure I would risk my life, you know. So I didn't do that either. So that's what I spent the first 3 hours of my day yesterday on, getting all of this stuff in shape. And luckily, since my car was parked outside, I did go over and visit my wife for a few minutes in the morning before she went to rehab. And then, of course, I got back to the garage and hooked it up with the 110 line instead of the 220 line. And then I was able to go back to the rehab center and see Gertrude. And everything went very well from that point on. I was able to spend a little time with her at lunch, which is what I normally do, and then I come home in the afternoon and I work on this rant for all of you. So it was an exciting day with respect to that, but it also ruined the fact that I did want to talk a little bit about the UN yesterday, because in my mind, UN doesn't stand for United Nations, it stands for useless nations. And I'll give you a brief shot at what I wanted to talk about. So the UN has gone ahead and condemned Russia for denying humanitarian aid access to occupied areas affected by the massive dam collapse that destroyed Odessa's coastline. So the UN is now all of a sudden ready to take action because they destroyed a dam, and the people in Odessa and the region around there are being affected by the flood that is carrying filthy water downstream and off the southern coast. This is posing serious health risks. Well, weren't there serious health risks when they set up 200,000 men on the border and the UN did nothing? Yes, the UN wasn't required to do anything because Ukraine is not a nation that belongs to the UN. They have been denied the privilege of belonging to the UN for many years. But this is a humanitarian organization, supposedly. Do you have to belong to the UN when the nation needs humanitarian services? I say no. I say the UN had an obligation because one of their countries, Russia, was acting improperly to a neighbor that just didn't happen to belong to the UN. Now, I'm not saying we should go there with troops and everything and defend Ukraine, because that wouldn't make any sense because they're not allowing Ukraine to belong. But I would believe that the UN can sanction Russia, can do something that will affect the lives of all Russians and make the world recognize that the UN isn't a useless organization, as I put it before. So the UN authorities are raising the alarm about the declining water quality and saying that lab tests had identified infectious agents over the last week or so. Well, of course there are infected agents getting into that terrible water supply. The traces of salmonella and worm eggs and worm larvae were found in all the water, which also significantly exceeded permitted levels of E. coli. So it remains to me unclear why the dam was deliberately targeted or if structural failure was behind the collapse. But in any event, it doesn't matter what caused the collapse. It collapsed. The UN had an obligation to save these people, even though they didn't have membership. And they should have stepped in right away because one of their members, one of their major members, is acting like assholes. And Russia should be sanctioned by every UN nation. But will they do anything like that? No. And that's why I feel confident in calling them useless. What is the purpose of having this great organization if they are useless? And I leave you with those thoughts this morning. Have a great day.